March 1945, Luxembourg. The Third Army Personnel Office is a hive of paper and ink. Clerks move folders with practiced ease. Typewriters clatter against the quiet hum of administration. It is a world of routine, but on one desk, the routine has stopped. A thick stack of promotion packets sits untouched. Each file represents a man who bled in the snow. Each file remains stuck. A red stamp falls. It says pending. This stamp has fallen on these same names for 180 days. In the neighboring office, white privates become sergeants in a week. Here, time is frozen. One man believes he can use a rubber stamp to erase the merit of 1,000 soldiers. He believes his desk is a fortress. He is mistaken. George S. Patton is about to show him that a paper trail can lead straight to a firing line. This is the story of how a single desk officer attempted to erase the achievements of an entire battalion, and what happened when George Patton discovered the silent paper wall, blocking their rightful advancement. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We tell the World War II stories that should show what happened when dignity was denied and then restored. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Redmond was 38 years old. He came from Boston, Massachusetts. He commanded a battalion of black infantrymen who had fought across France and into the mud of the borderlands. Redmond grew up in a house filled with books, the son of a physician who taught him that merit was the only true currency. He enlisted because he believed the army was the one place where a man's worth was measured by the speed of his draw and the steadiness of his heart. He had seen his men die in the freezing slush of the Ardennes, holding ground that white units had abandoned. He watched his best squad leaders crawl through minefields to save wounded comrades. Now, he sat in a damp command post, staring at a promotion list that never changed. His bravest men were still privates. After 6 months of combat, the army had not given them a single stripe. Major Stanley Osborne was 42 years old. He was a personnel officer from Rapid City, South Dakota. Osborne lived behind a desk far from the sound of German 88s. He believed in a world of fixed tiers and natural hierarchies. He often told his clerks that some men were born to lead, and others were born to serve, regardless of what a field manual claimed. He sat in a heated office wearing a tailored wool tunic that never saw a speck of mud. His boots were polished to a mirror shine every morning by a Belgian refugee. To Osborne, the stacks of paper on his desk were not men, but social experiments he intended to fail. He maintained a private log where white promotions moved in days, while folders from Redmond's unit were marked with a specific code. He called it a verification backlog. In reality, it was a silent grave for the careers of every black soldier under his pen. March 1945 saw the Third Army lunging toward the Rhine River. The German border was a jagged line of concrete bunkers, tooth-like tank traps, and desperate resistance. Logistics were a nightmare of mud, oil, and heavy metal. Millions of tons of supplies and thousands of personnel moved through the pipeline every single week. In the wake of the front lines, the rear echelons struggled to keep pace with the sheer volume of moving humanity. Command posts were often temporary tents or requisitioned town halls. Files were kept in battered wooden crates. It was a time of frantic motion and deep administrative shadows, where a man's future could be lost in a mislabeled box. The chaos of the rapid Allied advance created a massive vacuum. In the frantic rush to cross the river and enter the heart of Germany, the small details of soldier life often fell through the cracks of the bureaucracy. Most senior officers cared about 3 things: fuel for the tanks, ammunition for the artillery, and the daily casualty rates. They assumed the administrative machine in the rear worked with the same mechanical efficiency as the armored divisions at the front. They did not look closely at the ink or the signatures on the folders in the personnel offices. Other officers in the personnel section saw the discrepancies. They noticed that some units stayed exactly the same rank for months, while others climbed the military ladder with ease. They chose to say nothing. They viewed racial bias as an unfortunate but secondary friction of the Great War. It was easier to ignore a stack of frozen folders than to challenge a major with a clean service record and a sharp uniform. The prevailing attitude was one of quiet, cold complicity. As long as the guns kept firing and the maps kept moving forward, the internal rot of the system remained a hidden secret. Back in the quiet office in Luxembourg, Major Osborne picked up his red stamp once again. The personnel office was too warm. It smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. Lieutenant Colonel Redmond stood before the desk. He was 38. He was tired. He had driven 3 hours from the front lines. Major Osborne did not offer him a chair. Osborne was 42. He looked at a file. He did not look at the colonel. "Major, I am here about the promotion packets for the 761st, Redmond said. Osborne sighed. He put down his pen. "The backlog is significant, Colonel. It has been 6 months, Redmond said. "Verification takes time," Osborne said. "My men have earned those stripes in blood," Redmond said. "The Army is not a charity," Osborne said. "It is a meritocracy," Redmond said. "Or it is supposed to be." "We must ensure the quality of the non-commissioned officer corps," Osborne said. "The quality was verified at the Siegfried Line," Redmond said. "Field performance is one thing," Osborne said. "Administrative fitness is another. The other battalions in our regiment have had 87 promotions since October," Redmond said. "Those units have different standards of documentation," Osborne said. "They use the exact same forms, Major," Redmond said. "Forms are just paper," Osborne said. "I look at the men behind the paper." "And what do you see?" Redmond asked. "I see a group of soldiers who are doing their jobs," Osborne said. "But giving them permanent rank is a different matter entirely. They are already leading," Redmond said. "They command tanks in the dark. They hold the line. That is temporary necessity," Osborne said. "A stripe is a mark of status." "They earned that status," Redmond said. Osborne leaned back. He adjusted his tailored tunic. He looked at his polished boots. "An NCO represents the United States," Osborne said. "There are certain standards of heritage and temperament that we must maintain." "That is not in any field manual," Redmond said. "It is in the common sense of any man from a decent town," Osborne said. "You are intentionally holding these folders back," Redmond said. "I am managing a priority list," Osborne said. "Based on what?" Redmond asked. "Based on long-term military utility," Osborne said. "We cannot have a situation where the social order of our country is upended by a temporary wartime crisis." "You are using a rubber stamp to fight a private war," Redmond said. "Call it what you like," Osborne said. "My desk is the filter. I am protecting the future of the service from being diluted by people who aren't ready for the responsibility of a name. They lead squads under fire every day," Redmond said. "Let them lead," Osborne said. "They don't need a pay raise to follow orders. They should be happy to serve at all." "This is a direct violation of Third Army policy," Redmond said. "File your complaint, Colonel," Osborne said. "It will sit at the bottom of the stack just like your packets." Redmond looked at the red stamp on the desk. He looked at the major's clean hands. "Then I will take it to someone who values the truth," Redmond said. Osborne laughed. It was a thin, dry sound. "Patton has a war to win. He doesn't have time for your clerk work. Get out of my office." Redmond turned. He walked out of the warmth. He went straight to the staff car. The report reached Patton within the hour. Patton arrived within the hour. His jeep pulled up to the gate, 4 stars on his helmet and ivory revolvers on his belt. He walked into the building unannounced. The clatter of typewriters died instantly. Every man in the room stood at attention. Patton did not raise his voice. He walked straight to the desk of Major Osborne. Patton stood over the desk and looked at the stack of folders. He looked at the red stamp. "How many promotion packets are in this pile, Major?" Patton asked. 30. "General," Osborne said. "And how long have they been sitting here?" "Some for 6 months, sir. There is a backlog." "And the White Battalion in this same regiment? Did they have a backlog?" "Their records were easier to confirm, sir." "So, their courage is easier to read than a black man's courage." "It is a priority matter, General," Osborne said. "Is it, or is it a personal one?" "I follow regulations as I see them, sir." "Then your eyes are the problem." Patton leaned over the desk. "You talk to me of priority. You think this desk is a fortress for your private war. You believe holding back paper protects a social order. You are wrong. You are a thief. I saw Redmond's men at the Sour River. They did not wait for verification before they dove into freezing water. They did not ask for an administrative hold before they charged pillboxes. They did the work of soldiers while you did the work of a coward. You used your position to deny the rank men earned in blood. You sat in a heated room and decided prejudice mattered more than the Third Army. You have insulted the uniform and the men who died in it. A stripe is a promise. It says this army values merit. When you break that promise, you destroy morale. You are more dangerous than a German sniper because you kill the spirit of the men from the inside. The 761st is the highest-rated unit in this sector. Their bravery is a fact. Your backlog is a lie. I do not tolerate liars. I do not tolerate thieves who steal the honor of my soldiers. You have two options: process these 30 promotions by sunset, sign each one yourself, or I will strip those leaves off your shoulders and put you in a labor unit where your rank stays frozen until the war ends. Decide now. Osborne looked at the general's eyes. He saw no room for negotiation. He reached for his pen. His hand was shaking. He began to sign the first folder in the stack. Patton did not wait for a word. He turned and walked out. Major Osborne sat at his desk for the next 12 hours. 2 military policemen stood behind him, their boots clicking on the wooden floor every time they shifted weight. The room was silent except for the rhythmic, violent thud of a rubber stamp and the scratching of a fountain pen. Osborne's hand began to cramp by the 10th folder, but the guards did not allow him to stop. He could smell the sharp chemical scent of fresh ink and the sweat of his own fear. The other clerks, men he had lectured on hierarchy just days before, watched him in a heavy silence. They saw the man who had played God with careers reduced to a biological machine of signatures. Each thud of the stamp echoed like a gavel. By dawn, 30 folders sat in a neat pile, all signed and approved. A Third Army directive was posted on the bulletin board within the hour. Promotions would henceforth be processed by submission date, first in, first out, with no exceptions. An officer from the Inspector General's office arrived and took the red stamp. He handed Osborne a set of orders. The major was stripped of his authority and reassigned to a Graves registration unit. He would no longer decide who moved up. He would only record who went down. Charles Redmond returned to Boston in 1946. He did not boast of his medals. He dedicated his life to the law. He became a leading voice for civil rights and fair employment throughout New England. He often told his students that the greatest enemy of progress was not a bullet. It was a bureaucrat with a grudge. He lived to see the military finally reflect the equality he had fought for. He passed away in 1982 at the age of 75. The men of his battalion remembered him as the officer who broke the silent wall of the personnel office. Stanley Osborne returned to South Dakota after a quiet discharge in late 1945. He lived the rest of his life in the shadow of his own bitterness. He worked in minor administrative roles that offered no power. He never understood that the world had changed while he was busy with his rubber stamps. He died in 1974. He was a recluse who spent his final days surrounded by old newspapers. He remained convinced until the end that he had been the victim of a great misunderstanding by a military that no longer respected tradition. General Patton never spoke of the Luxembourg incident in public. He kept the report on the promotion freeze in a locked drawer until the end of the war. In a private letter to his wife, he briefly mentioned that the hardest battles were sometimes fought against the small-minded men on his own side. He wrote that a commander who denies a brave man his earned rank is a traitor to the very idea of victory. Some historians argue that Patton's action in Luxembourg was a moment of moral clarity, proving he valued performance far above the social prejudices of his era. They see it as a rare instance of a general using his authority to dismantle a silent, administrative form of racism. Others argue that this was an isolated case of personal temper rather than a systemic shift, noting that broader military inequalities remained largely unchallenged. What is certain is that Patton's specific directive ended the promotion freeze in the Third Army, ensuring that hundreds of earned stripes were finally delivered to the men who had bled for them. If you had been in Patton's position, would you have done the same, or would you have tried to resolve the issue through slower, official channels? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories about what happened when dignity was denied and then restored, make sure to subscribe.